an otherwise unremarkable morning in August 2005, a chilling discovery awaited authorities in a secluded parking lot in Chicago. Inside a parked sedan, concealed in black plastic bags, lay the dismembered remains of a man later identified as He Lei, a promising young student who had come to America seeking academic success. His killer was soon revealed to be none other than his own wife, Danlei Chen, a fellow Chinese student with a reputation for academic excellence and an unusual obsessive attachment to He Lei. This grisly crime, which rocked both Chinese and American communities, was not a random act of violence, but the culmination of years of simmering jealousy, insecurity, and psychological unraveling. Chen's journey from a high-achieving student to a convicted murderer became a subject of both fascination and horror, raising questions about the psychology of love, control, and obsession. Who was Danlei Chen, and what led her down a path so dark that it ended with the brutal murder of her own husband? To understand, one must start from the beginning, where a story of ambition, insecurity, and love turned toxic in ways no one could have foreseen. In 1998, on the prestigious campus of Tsinghua University in Beijing, Danlei Chen first crossed paths with He Lei. Though both were students, their personalities could not have been more different. Chen was an intense, introverted student, often seen alone in the library or the studio, where she indulged in her passion for painting. Her academic brilliance was apparent, but her social interactions were limited, and she kept to herself, appearing cold and distant to those around her. He Lei, on the other hand, was everything she was not. He was charismatic, extroverted, and effortlessly popular. Friends and acquaintances gravitated toward him, drawn to his warmth and sociable nature. He Lei came from a modest background in Shanghai, a city where ambition and hard work were highly prized, and he was determined to make a mark. His presence on campus was like a breath of fresh air, his laughter and easygoing attitude making him well-liked among his peers. For Chen, meeting He Lei was transformative. He represented a world she admired, yet had always felt alienated from. Although she had been a top student all her life, excelling in academics had come at the cost of her social skills, which left her feeling perpetually isolated. In He Lei, she saw someone who could break through her loneliness, someone who could perhaps complete the life she envisioned but had never managed to attain. One day while leaving class, Chen noticed a fountain pen lying on the ground. It was a Hero 100, a brand well regarded among students for its quality and elegance. Out of habit, she picked it up, only to realize that it belonged to He Lei, who had been searching frantically for it. Their brief exchange over the lost pen sparked a connection that would quickly turn into friendship, and, soon after, an intense romantic relationship. Initially, their relationship brought Chen happiness she had never known. Being with He Lei made her feel complete, as though she had finally found a piece of herself that had been missing. He Lei's attention and affection filled a void within her, allowing her to escape from the insecurities that had plagued her since childhood. But over time, her attachment to He Lei began to evolve into something darker and more consuming. Chen's insecurities soon manifested as jealousy and control. She became obsessed with He Lei's whereabouts, who he spoke to, and even how he spent his free time. For her, his love was a fragile gift that could be taken away at any moment, and the thought terrified her. Chen's fear of losing him grew stronger with each passing day, leading her to monitor his activities obsessively. She started calling him frequently, questioning him about his interactions with others, and insisting on knowing every detail of his schedule. He Lei initially indulged her behavior, seeing it as a sign of affection. He reasoned that her protectiveness came from a place of love. However, her demands became increasingly suffocating. He Lei found himself constantly justifying his actions, apologizing for spending time with friends, and, eventually, distancing himself from people outside of their relationship. As Chen's jealousy intensified, she isolated him from his social circles, effectively cutting him off from his friends. In one instance, He Lei went out for a casual lunch with a group of classmates, only to be met with Chen's accusations and tears upon his return. "Why wasn't I invited?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. No amount of reassurance seemed enough for her, and He Lei's life began to revolve solely around appeasing her insecurities. Their relationship was becoming toxic, but he did not yet see the extent of the danger. After their graduation, Chen was awarded a scholarship to pursue a doctoral degree at Purdue University in the United States. It was an opportunity she had worked tirelessly for, and her acceptance into the program was a testament to her academic dedication. Chen was thrilled, seeing this as a new beginning for her and He Lei, a chance to build a life together, away from the pressures and expectations of their homeland. However, she knew that He Lei's support was essential to her vision of their future. Although He Lei had secured a place in Tsinghua's graduate program, he decided to follow Chen to America as her spouse, a decision that would allow him to apply for a dependent visa and accompany her abroad. At the time, this arrangement was common among international students, who saw it as a sacrifice for love and family. For He Lei, it was a way to support Chen's dreams, and he believed their relationship would thrive in a new environment. Once they arrived in the United States, the couple initially appeared happy. They settled into a modest apartment near Purdue University, where Chen threw herself into her studies. However, life in a foreign country proved to be more challenging than Chen had anticipated. She struggled with the cultural adjustment, the language barrier, and, most of all, the social isolation that came with living abroad. Unlike He Lei, who quickly adapted and made friends among the other international students, Chen withdrew further into herself. The pressures of academic life began to weigh heavily on her, and she found herself increasingly dependent on He Lei's presence. She expected him to provide constant emotional support, to be there whenever she needed him, and to forsake his own social life for her comfort. However, He Lei thrived in the new environment, enjoying the freedom and independence that America offered. He joined study groups, attended social gatherings, and embraced the experience of being in a new country. For Chen, this was a nightmare. Every friendship He Lei formed felt like a betrayal, a threat to the carefully constructed world she had built around him. The strain on their relationship became apparent to those around them. Friends and classmates noticed how Chen often seemed tense, her eyes scanning the room whenever He Lei spoke to others. At social events, she would cling to him, her discomfort palpable as she watched him interact with their peers. He Lei's once outgoing and carefree nature began to change as well. He became reserved, his laughter muted, his interactions with friends curtailed by Chen's ever-watchful presence. Arguments became a regular occurrence between them, with Chen accusing He Lei of neglecting her, and He Lei feeling increasingly trapped. Their disagreements often escalated into intense confrontations, during which Chen's possessive tendencies became more pronounced. In her mind, He Lei was the center of her universe, and any attempt on his part to assert independence was met with resistance. One winter evening, after a particularly heated argument, He Lei suggested that they take a break to reassess their relationship. He told Chen that he felt stifled and needed space to find himself. To Chen, this was the ultimate betrayal. The idea of losing him was unbearable, and she saw his request as a rejection of everything they had built together. In her mind, He Lei was slipping away, and she was determined to do whatever it took to keep him close. As their relationship deteriorated, Chen became increasingly erratic. She began monitoring He Lei's activities even more closely, checking his phone, questioning him relentlessly, and attempting to control every aspect of his life. Her actions became invasive and extreme, and He Lei's patience wore thin. He confided in friends, expressing his frustration and helplessness. But he did not realize the depth of Chen's obsession. The final breaking point came on Christmas Eve in 2004. He Lei had gone to a holiday gathering with a group of friends, and despite Chen's protests, he stayed out late into the night. When he finally returned, Chen was waiting for him in a state of rage. She confronted him, accusing him of betraying her, of valuing his friends more than their relationship. The argument escalated, and in a fit of anger, Chen grabbed a knife from the kitchen and lunged at him. Though He Lei survived the attack with only minor injuries, the incident was reported to the police as an act of domestic violence. Danlei Chen was arrested and briefly held in custody before He Lei, in a moment of compassion, posted her bail. Despite her violent outburst, He Lei could not bring himself to abandon her. He believed that she needed help, that her actions were a result of her insecurities and emotional struggles. However, He Lei had finally reached his limit. He told Chen that he wanted a divorce, a statement that sent her into a spiral of despair. In her mind, divorce was synonymous with failure, a fate she could not bear after sacrificing so much to be with him. She remembered her mother's anguish over her father's perceived infidelity, her own fear of abandonment mirroring her mother's paranoia. Rather than letting go, Chen decided to take matters into her own hands. In the months following the Christmas incident, Danlei Chen's behavior became increasingly erratic and obsessive. She viewed He Lei's desire for a divorce as a threat to her very existence, a rejection that she simply could not accept. To her, the notion of separation or divorce was an attack on her identity, her sacrifices, and the life she had imagined for them together. Rather than attempting reconciliation or seeking help, Chen's mind turned to darker solutions. Chen began meticulously planning what she saw as the only way to preserve her relationship with He Lei, by ensuring that if she could not have him, no one else would. This transformation from desperation to calculation marked a chilling turn in her psyche. With a calmness that belied her intentions, Chen wrote down her plan, detailing how she would carry out the crime, dispose of the body, and flee without a trace. She even tested the soundproofing of their apartment and experimented with methods to minimize noise, knowing that He Lei's final moments would be spent in their shared home. On certain nights, she rehearsed her plan silently, timing her actions and estimating how long it would take to execute each step. Chen's chilling dedication to her plot was underscored by her purchase of a handgun. She sourced the weapon through an online seller, ensuring it was equipped with a silencer to avoid detection. Each purchase, each step in her plan, demonstrated her determination to carry out an irreversible act. By early August 2005, Danlei Chen was ready. The night of August 20th, 2005 was stormy, with thunder rumbling through the dark skies, a detail that Chen had meticulously planned for. She waited until early morning, around 3 a.m., when she knew He Lei would be deeply asleep. Quietly, she retrieved the gun she had hidden beneath her pillow and walked to his side of the bed. In the silence of the dimly lit room, Chen hesitated for only a moment before pulling the trigger. The gun silencer muffled the shot, masking the sound beneath the thunder outside. He Lei, unaware and unprepared, was gone in an instant. Chen's face showed no signs of shock or remorse. She had prepared herself for this moment, and the reality of her actions seemed to bring her a perverse sense of relief. Once He Lei was dead, Chen moved quickly. She placed his body on the floor, covering it with a blanket, and spent the next few hours contemplating her next steps. In the quiet darkness of their apartment, Chen sat beside He Lei's body, a surreal calm settling over her as she gazed at the man she had once claimed to love. For the next 7 days, Danlei Chen lived with He Lei's body in their apartment. She continued with her daily routine, even making brief outings, but each time she returned, the reality of her actions weighed heavily upon her. By the third day, an odor began to emanate from the room where He Lei's body lay. Chen knew that if she did not act soon, her carefully laid plans would fall apart. Faced with the necessity of disposing of the body, she contacted a man she had found on the internet, claiming to need help with a special task. She offered him $2,000 in cash to assist her in getting rid of He Lei's remains. However, when the man arrived and realized the nature of the job, he refused, leaving Chen to manage the situation alone. In a horrifying turn of events, Chen decided to dismember He Lei's body herself. She procured a hacksaw, garbage bags, and cleaning supplies, and spent the following night carrying out the gruesome task. Her detachment was unsettling. She approached the act as though it were a clinical task, driven not by emotion, but by necessity. She carefully packed the body parts into several large garbage bags, which she stored temporarily in her car's trunk. Chen then drove to a remote, abandoned parking lot outside of Chicago, where she planned to leave the bags and depart unnoticed. The location had been chosen meticulously, based on its lack of security cameras and infrequent patrols. When she arrived, she unloaded the bags, carefully arranging them in the back seat of the car she intended to abandon. She glanced back once before leaving, murmuring a final goodbye before disappearing into the night. With He Lei's remains left in an abandoned vehicle in Chicago, Danlei Chen focused on executing the final phase of her plan, fleeing the United States and evading justice. She had meticulously prepared her escape, forging identification documents and disguising herself as a man in an attempt to pass as He Lei. Her goal was to slip through airport security undetected and board a flight back to China, believing that distance would offer her a chance to disappear and start over. Chen's nerves were tightly wound as she approached the customs checkpoint at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Clad in men's clothing, wearing a wig, and carrying falsified documents, she handed over her passport, which bore He Lei's name and identity. The customs officer inspecting her documents noticed discrepancies in her appearance and behavior, raising suspicions. After a brief exchange, Chen's passport was flagged for further scrutiny. Realizing her plan was unraveling, Chen hastily abandoned her attempt and managed to slip away from the airport before a deeper investigation could detain her. Determined to escape, she made her way to another airport and managed to board a flight back to Shanghai, using her own identity for the latter leg of her journey. Her belief that returning to China would shield her from repercussions was quickly proven wrong. Upon her arrival at Shanghai Pudong International Airport, Chinese customs officials detained her for attempting to enter the country under suspicious circumstances. The discrepancies in her travel documents triggered further investigation. As Chinese authorities questioned her, they became aware of the developing case in the United States, where He Lei's dismembered remains had been discovered. The U.S. police, already in contact with their Chinese counterparts, provided crucial evidence linking Danlei Chen to the murder. The cross-border cooperation between law enforcement agencies ensured that Chen would not be able to escape justice. Faced with mounting evidence, she eventually confessed to the crime during interrogations, revealing the calculated nature of her actions and the steps she had taken to cover up her husband's murder. The trial of Danlei Chen was a highly publicized event in China, drawing intense media scrutiny and sparking debate about domestic violence, mental health, and the pressures faced by international students. The case, which highlighted the brutal killing of He Lei, captivated the public and became a focal point for discussions on the darker aspects of obsessive love and control. During the trial, prosecutors laid out the detailed evidence against Chen. They presented her handwritten notes outlining the steps of her plan, the purchase of the firearm and silencer, and the gruesome acts of dismemberment. The court heard from forensic experts who described the meticulous nature of the crime and the clear signs of premeditation. The prosecution emphasized that Chen's actions were deliberate and cold-blooded, driven by her desire to control He Lei even in death. Chen's defense team argued that she had suffered from severe mental distress, stemming from a troubled childhood and exacerbated by the pressures of living abroad. Psychologists testified that she exhibited signs of an attachment disorder, which had led to extreme dependency and possessive behavior. Her defense claimed that her actions were the result of a psychological breakdown, not a calculated act of murder. They highlighted her history of emotional instability, seeking leniency on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Despite these arguments, the court found Danlei Chen guilty of premeditated murder. The judge emphasized the severity and brutality of her crime, noting that her actions demonstrated a clear intent to kill and a subsequent attempt to escape justice. While acknowledging her difficult background, the court concluded that her crime warranted a severe sentence. Danlei Chen was sentenced to death, with a 2-year reprieve, a common practice in China, allowing for a possible commutation to life imprisonment if the convict demonstrates good behavior during the reprieve period. The ruling underscored both the gravity of her actions and the court's willingness to consider potential mitigating factors. Throughout the trial, public reactions were divided. Some expressed sympathy for Chen, citing the immense pressures she faced as an international student and the apparent psychological distress that contributed to her actions. Others viewed her as a manipulative and cold-hearted killer, emphasizing the calculated nature of her crime and the suffering inflicted on He Lei's family. The cooperation between Chinese and U.S. law enforcement in bringing Danlei Chen to justice demonstrated a commitment to accountability across borders. For He Lei's family, however, no sentence could erase the pain of their loss. They mourned the senseless death of a beloved son and brother whose promising future was cut short in a tragic act of violence. The case of Danlei Chen highlighted more than just a tragic story of love gone wrong. It sparked a larger conversation about the cultural and psychological pressures faced by international students, particularly those from backgrounds with rigid familial expectations. Many Chinese students arrive in America with dreams of academic and personal success, but find themselves struggling to adjust to a culture that often clashes with the values they were raised with. For Chen, the isolation of being abroad, combined with her emotional dependency on He Lei, may have intensified her possessive tendencies. Experts pointed to the need for better mental health resources, particularly for international students who may lack the support networks they had at home. The case underscored the dangers of untreated psychological disorders, particularly those related to attachment and control, and the potential for such issues to escalate if left unaddressed. Chen's upbringing also highlighted the ways in which dysfunctional family dynamics can shape an individual's understanding of love and attachment. Having grown up in a household where control was often exerted through fear and manipulation, she replicated those behaviors in her own relationship, ultimately leading to catastrophic consequences. Today, Danlei Chen remains incarcerated, her life confined to the walls of a prison. Her dreams of a promising career, a stable marriage, and a life abroad are now overshadowed by the crime that will forever define her. For He Lei's family, the grief remains raw. They lost a beloved son and brother to a crime they struggle to understand, a loss that no sentence or explanation could ever heal. The case of Danlei Chen and He Lei stands as a haunting reminder of the destructive power of unaddressed mental health issues and the danger of obsessive, possessive love. It underscores the importance of recognizing the warning signs in relationships, of seeking help before emotions turn toxic, and of the need for support systems that can prevent such tragedies. In the end, the story of Danlei Chen and He Lei is not just a tale of love gone wrong. It is a cautionary tale of how ambition, insecurity, and unchecked emotional turmoil can converge into a deadly force, forever altering lives and leaving behind a legacy of heartbreak and tragedy.